I think we are live now. Hello, everyone who is joining us from all over the world, like our speakers are. If you are new here, please let us know where you're joining in from. I think that'll be cool to see where everyone is coming from because this being such a global and diverse community, it's always fun to see. And I know the time zone is like odd for some hours, but it'll be fun to see where people are joining in from. Cool. So we have a lot to discuss. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start off with some intros. And I don't want to do like some regular intros where we just say our name and our job title and all of that. So I want to make it fun. And so when you introduce yourself, I would request you to mention a open source project which you were really excited for or which excited you this year, but it cannot be the open source project of the company you're working for. So I cannot say Miradi, Courtney can't say Kyverno. And yes, so do you want to start, Whitney?
Sure. My name is Whitney Lee. I'm a senior technical advocate at Datadog. And I don't know how fun this is, but I think it's been really interesting to watch Kubernetes itself and how it's changing to support Gen AI workloads.
Courtney, do you want to go next?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Courtney. I am head of community at Nirmata, the creators of the Kyverno project. Thanks for mentioning it, Harsh. And yeah, I think the project that I've been most excited about this year, and also I don't know how fun it is in terms for people who are already involved in it, but I recently discovered the Cloud Native PG project. It's very, apart from being a very, very active and cool community, I think the project itself is super cool. Seeing how operators have come from
what is it? Courtney, what is it?
Grade Postgres SQL. Yeah, super declarative management, and the reason I took an interest in it is because they have very strong default security things, and so they reached out to talk about policies and policies for Postgres workloads specifically. And then I kind of went down the rabbit hole and was like, oh, look at this. Oh, wow. So if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, hey everyone, I'm Shivai. I'm also part of the CNCF Ambassador program, and I've been a regular contributor to a bunch of different AIML projects within the CNCF landscape. Primarily, there are a couple of them that were launched this year that I'm super excited for. So one is called KitOps. The idea is that they're trying to revolutionize how we package AI projects from the ground up as OCI artifacts. And the other one is Model Pack, which is helping to redefine specifications on how models should be treated as first-class citizens when it comes to OC artifacts. But of course, I think Whitney is absolutely correct in terms of the core Kubernetes project itself, with DRA now finally being GA, and all of the other projects surrounding the ecosystem are geared towards AI. And I'm really bullish towards cloud native being the future of AI. We're already seeing the world's biggest companies adopting Kubernetes for running AI workloads, and I'm just excited to see how we are quickly embracing Kubernetes for everything.
And
Super
for the
excited.
uninitiated, DRA stands for Dynamic Resource Allocation.
Yep. Thank you. That was lovely. And I'm Arsh. I work as a senior DevRel at Metal Bear. And my favorite project to see this year was the Kube Resource Orchestrator, which allows you to create abstractions over a bunch of different Kubernetes resources. I think it's a cool project because it started off as something Amazon was building, and then it got donated to the CNCF, and now it's part of the Kubernetes SIGs repo. And it's just been really cool to see how, community just keeps on coming with abstractions on top of Kubernetes, because everyone just feels that it's too complicated to give developers and DevOps people like direct access to it. So we are building these abstractions to make stuff easier.
What's an example? I've never heard of that one.
Example of what?
Of like an abstraction you can build on top of Kubernetes.
So Kube Resource Orchestrator, which is the project, it allows like admins to create a YAML where they can configure, this is these many pods I want, and this is the deployment structure, that's what it should look like. And then developers can themselves just consume a single entity, which can
Ah,
be like a custom resource. So instead of having to deal with and create individual pods, services and all of that, it gets packaged and developers don't have to worry about that. It's kind of similar to crossplane, but I think it works with like a lot of different other stuff than the things crossplane is targeting.
very cool.
Cool. So now that we are done with introductions, and since everyone's fresh out of KubeCon Atlanta, I guess fresh being a relative term, I would ask everyone to summarize their KubeCon experience. So it can be anything about like, what you were up to during the conferences, if you had talks, were you at the booth, how was that like? And when you do that, like it would be great if you could point out one highlight for KubeCon, like one thing which you were just like, which made you happy, which made you like smile, and which is still like fresh in your mind. Let's start with Whitney.
So the thing that excited me the most, there was one keynote about supply chain security that was done by Stacy Potter, who's the community manager for OpenSSF, and Adolfo Garcia. I'm not sure what he's employed to do, but anyway, two like great people, great friends, and they made a play about supply chain security. So she came on really upset because like her system was getting hijacked, and like it was being used to mine Bitcoin, and she couldn't figure out how or where or get rid of it. And then Adolfo comes on as a superhero in a lucha libre mask, and he like saves the day. It was so fun and funny. It made me cackle in my seat. I loved it so much. So that was my favorite thing. And then personally, I was up to a lot. I actually had 3 different day zero talks, and then I spoke at 2 panels and a sponsored demo. So I had 6 different talks, and I was just running from one thing to the next. And I feel really proud of actually every one of them, every last one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an achievement if you made to all 6 of your talks, considering how the venue was. Like it's almost like a marathon at that point.
Just to even show up, let alone give a good presentation, right?
What about you, Shiva?
Yeah, I think like for me it's probably, and I'm the one who is probably responsible for this, but it's like I've been to 10 KubeCons now, so it's every single KubeCon feels the same but yet different. If you know what I mean, it's the same sort of type of people. The format is pretty much the same. But that being said, like you still get to learn a lot, and you get to be able to get new experiences that you encounter. But I think for me, the best highlight is always being part of a Contrefest. So my first ever experience of being at a Contrefest was back in 2023, where my bad, actually 2022, where I contributed to Caverno for the first time at a Contrefest, and that's where I realized that how wonderful Contrefests can be. And for the last couple of
Will you
years,
describe Country Fest for those who don't know about it?
I've
Yeah.
heard about
Sorry.
it, but like I don't know like about it in detail.
Okay, so let me explain. So Contrefest is basically a gathering for about 1.5 hours, where you have to apply for Contrefest like a regular CFP process, similar to how we apply for talks at KubeCons. But the idea is that at Contrefest, the maintainers of the projects, they come together and have a very open space where contributors or even someone who is just new, has never heard of about that particular project, can come into the room and have one-to-one interactions with the maintainers. So it could go either two ways. The maintainers first introduce the project, and then everyone just gathers around and can take up issues that they might be interested on working with. And the best part is that you are literally in front of the maintainer, and you're working on these projects, and they are helping you figure out probably like, okay, how to install Kverno, or maybe okay, I'll take this good first issue, and you'll start working on it, and they'll literally be with you, helping guide you make your first ever contribution. So I think we don't talk about this a lot, and that kind of pains me, because I have brought this up with the CNCF even more, that we should actively advocate about Contrefest, because they are such a golden way of being able to take up new projects and contribute. Because as you know, that if you're working virtually, you might be scared to reach out to maintainers. B, they might actually be busy with their day jobs, but here you're there with them for 1.5 hours face to face, And whether you want to learn about a project or you want to make a serious contribution, you can do anything that you want, because the maintainers are there for you to learn and grow with that project. So for the last couple of KubeCons in North America, I've been Contrifest host for the Mesh project, where I used to be a maintainer before. And even this time we had like 3 people who made their first ever contributions to Mesh in just that 1.5 hours. So I think like we don't speak about this more, and ideally we should be running even more Contrifests. But I think that's always the personal highlight for me, where we see people get so much excited, and that face-to-face interaction between the maintainers and first-time contributors. So it's like the contributor fest is, of course, like that's a completely different thing. But these are just for anyone to come and get involved with hands-on with CNCF projects. So that is why I'm so bullish about being like showing them off even more, or having even more of them.
Very cool.
That is pretty cool. What about you, Courtney? What was your KubeCon highlight?
I'm so glad you mentioned ContribFest, because the Kyverno project hosts ContribFest. They're always amazing. People are so great. My highlight from KubeCon, I had a very much like Whitney. My first day was very complicated, because we hosted the first ever KyvernoCon co-located event, which is this time a half-day event. Thank you. Yes, it's a big milestone for our community. I'm very excited and so proud of it. But then also between hosting that, I had like 4 other talks that day. So it was a
Courtney was in
complicated
superhuman mode that day.
yeah, and I'm certain everybody else's co-located events were amazing, but I have no recollection of living them, even if I spoke at them, other than like delivering my talk, be like, thank God I found where it was and got this information out. But one of the biggest highlights from that day, that I have 2 actually. One, it was at KyvernoCon. I have 2 people that when I first took the job as head of community, they were like the first 2 people to ever reach out and be interested in contributing to the Kyverno project. And they both ended up submitting to KyvernoCon and had got selected by our totally adjacent to me track committee. And somewhere in between this year of managing that community, I connected them on Slack. And so they'd only ever met each other in Slack, and they live on opposite ends of the world. And they were like kids getting ready to meet their best friend. When's he going to show up? When he's going to show up? And I was like, he's going to be here in 10 minutes, right? And getting the 2 of them and seeing the 2 of them meet face to face and then spend the whole week together was I think one of the most enriching experiences I've had in connecting people in this space. It was very cool.
Yeah.
It was a very cool thing to experience and to witness the 2 of them, but also it was very fulfilling for me to have been the person who connected them both virtually and then in person. So that was a huge highlight. And then the other highlight from that day is I gave a lightning talk with a Ramiro about different ways to get involved in tech. And we had so many people. Like I truly was. I had like 15 minutes to get back to my KyvernoCon event to wrap it up after giving that talk. But we had so many people at the door just thanking us for that talk, and it was truly just about how to get involved in tech. You might be transitioning from a different career. You might have always been a techie from the time you were a kid playing video games, and it was a very natural career path. Ramiro and I have both taken very different paths to end up in the same place and to become friends with each other. But the number of people that were like, I'm now inspired to mentor others. I'm super inspired to get involved in a community. I didn't realize that there are other people who are like self-taught technically and looking for others to network with. It was fantastic. That was probably the most proud I felt of any talk I've ever given was that one.
I really feel that we should have the reactions like how we have in Zoom whenever we hear something
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
I I think there's some stuff you can do, but I don't want to experiment with the settings right now. But Cody, what you were saying about like getting those two people to meet at KubeCon, that reminded me of like my first KubeCon when I attended for the first time, and it's such a wonderful feeling. It's one of my favorite like reasons to attend KubeCon, and I remember like. It was during COVID, so there had not been like KubeCons when I started contributing to Kubernetes. So it was like almost a year and a half of working with people on Slack and on Zoom calls and all of that. And then when you actually see them in person, the excitement and the wait, and then getting to spend that time together, that's like such a great feeling. And I think my first KubeCon was in Valencia, and I always like remember the first time. So I don't know if some of you know Nabarun, but we used to work together like on Slack, and we had never met. But the way we met was so funny because we were just walking and we were clicking pictures of something touristy in Valencia. And I looked to my right and he was just there. And then we were like, oh, it took us a second to recognize each other from our Slack photos, but it was such a wholesome moment.
Yeah, it's one of those
Cool.
moments where it's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you're real. And you're
Yeah.
taller than I
Yeah.
thought, or you're shorter than I thought. Or
And I think
I remember. Yeah.
no, I was
Go
just saying
ahead.
that
No,
like
yeah.
since Courtney you mentioned about running a lightning talk around how can people get involved with tech. I think I was just part of one network nooks during KubeCon. So again, for those folks who are
oh,
not aware
cool.
what these are just public spaces in the large booth areas. So you have to find your way to be able to get to one of these. But the idea is that these are just casual hangout spots for people to take up a topic and discuss. So I think one of the topics was around how to de-stress from tech and what do people do outside of tech as well, which is something which for someone who comes purely from a tech background, they can also learn a lot more that there's life around outside of tech as well. So just wanted to bring that up. Like I think it's both ways that you learn for people who don't come from a traditional background, how they can get involved and how can people take some time off touch grass. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool that you get to see all the different kinds of experiences and you have discussions around everything basically at KubeCon. That's one of the best things about being there.
Networking is cool because everyone says like, oh, the hallway track. But if you're going there alone as a person, like how do you start a conversation with a stranger? So spaces like Network Nook are great because it's like here, everyone who's curious to make some new friends and who wants to start a conversation, come meet at this place in this time and find your KubeCon buddy,
Yeah. Cool. I think now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's AI. And I want to just talk about everyone's opinions on like what did you see different between KubeCon London and Atlanta in terms of maybe people were talking about AI more, or were they talking about less? Were they saying just the same thing, or did like the way they were talking about AI change? Like I remember KubeCon London was about, we're gonna Kubernetes will help you run everything on AI. And whereas this time around, at least I was mostly in the vendor booth area. So I saw a lot more just platforms integrating AI into their solution. So it was like all of the vendors were just like, we have an AI chatbot for our dashboard. Our AI gives you insights. So I saw like the shift from, using Kubernetes to run stuff on using Kubernetes to run AI related stuff to just AI related features being built into like offerings by different vendors. I'm curious to hear what everyone's experience related to that was. This time, let's start with Courtney.
Yeah, this is an interesting KubeCon because there was an AI for everyone, and anything you could possibly imagine, somebody had built an AI for it. And to be honest, I like everybody else am fascinated by the whole AI space, and sometimes I'm fascinated by how well my own ChatGPT knows me. Like it already knows that my next question is going to be when it prompts me at the end. And those things are fascinating. However, this KubeCon, I found it was a very different atmosphere around AI. You had clearly people who were fascinated by it and they just wanted to hear all about what you were building in AI. then at least in my experience, and we had a whole set of people who are like, yeah, I don't want to know about your AI. Like, tell me something that there's an actual use case that people know works and that's real. And then there was a whole nother set of people that literally were like, why are you even building this? What's the purpose of it? How would I actually use this in real life? And as the week progressed, I found that third group of people actually, it was like their question around, okay, so you have this AI, but what's the use case and what would my use case be? And oh my gosh, but I was so excited at the beginning of this week, but now I'm thinking about it. I'm not really sure what my own use case is. And especially from platform teams, it was like you could see that dynamic shift as the week went on. And I found that to be fascinating, to watch people go from the, I want to know all about your AI, to all of a sudden being like, wait a second, I don't even know what my own use case would be around this. It's very cool watching it happen, but also I don't know how I'd leverage it. And so it was an interesting
Yeah.
week to talk to people about AI for me.
There's this study that came out in August from MIT, and it said that like 95% of AI initiatives fail, with the success being like affecting the bottom line profit of the business. Like we spent all this money on AI, did it affect the bottom line profit? And so I think AI, I do know some use cases where AI is amazing. I mean, as a coding agent, for example, like where there's definitely right and wrongs. But so I think that like there was this like trough of disillusionment, as you will, as far as the hype cycle goes. But also, I think there are some use cases that definitely work, and in those use cases that work, they work really well and they're very helpful. And those tend to be like back end repeatable tasks that AI can do. But then, so the conversation became at KubeCon for those use cases. How do we operationalize AI? So in a couple ways, like with those coding agents, now we're receiving way more code from developers. Like as DevOps practitioners, like as how are we like minimizing bloat, and then how are we able to use like integrate that into our system fast enough, because we weren't built for this level of code all at once. But then also a lot about guardrails and consistency, and like there's a new working group called AI conformance, and apparently that with the goal of being able to certify your Kubernetes platform to run AI workloads by a certain set of standards agreed upon by the community.
I think that was announced at the keynote, right? Like a
Yeah.
like CNCF conformance project or something like that. What about you, Shivai? Did you see more AI, less AI? Like, were there any differences between London and Atlanta, according to you, in terms of AI and cloud native?
Yeah, I think like because as someone who has a very strict focus, and that's always AI, I think there were some subtle differences, but not a lot in terms of like, okay, where are we seeing as a direction of AI? So I mean, Courtney is absolutely correct in like sharing about how we were, and what you also mentioned about operationalizing AI. But yeah, I mean, then the notion for essentially like seeing two or three different core archetypes when it comes to seeing how Kubernetes and Cloud Native is being used to adopt AI. So of course, that one is probably the most promising one, which is running large-scale AI operations. We had some wonderful keynotes this year at both in London and in Atlanta as well around adoption. So I think like one of my personal favorites one was this how Niantic uses Pokemon Go, and they were using Kubernetes as their de facto platform for running their entire raid system, even though that might not have involved like direct AI. I think they had some kind of reinforcement algorithm. But anyways, like that is one of the key highlights for me, which again portrays that yes, when it comes to large scale adoption, and when you look at other projects in the ecosystem like the Cube project, which allows for much larger batch processing of workloads for AI workloads, then you know that yes, Kubernetes is the de facto platform, and there is so much conversations. I think many more conversations around GPU and how you effectively manage GPUs on Kubernetes workloads for AI. So that's definitely like one major highlight. Now, at the same time, we are already seeing a lot of people trying to adopt MCP, because I would say that during April, MCP had just taken off, right? So there were like these two major waves. One was at the end of last year when it was officially launched, but then it kind of died down for about a couple of months before it took off again in kind of end of March. So at KubeCon, we were still kind of just seeing some very high level POCs, people like just integrating very, very high level agents that didn't really do much. But at this KubeCon, you could see that, yes, like almost everyone is trying to put agentic AI as part of their story. Now, whether it's to operationalize or maybe, as Courtney and Whitney mentioned about being able to like look at from the other side of things, which is not just ingestion, large scale ingestion of logs or code that you're getting for your DevSecOps platform, but also how do you improve the developer experience of using your platform
Mhm.
and kind of throwing in some agentic workflows or MCP. But I think the general sentiment is that people were excited, but at the same time, um, you have to basically deal with a lot of scrutiny when it comes to being able to run these in production, because of the fact that despite best efforts of companies putting in some guardrails, you're still at a huge risk of hallucination. And I think one of the funniest things that happened was that I was at one of the booths. I'll not name the booth, but they had these demos for running agents, and I wanted to like just quickly get one done, but we tried three times, and we just went into a loop where the MCP server was clearly not working at all, and the demo failed like literally three times consecutively before it finally worked at a live booth at the event, and it's like, and it's an open source project, so I'm not even going to talk about the project, but it is an open source project for MCPs in Kubernetes. You can probably guess, but yes, it just didn't work, and that's expected. Like, it's not that it is unexpected, it is expected because of the non-deterministic nature of AI models. So I feel, yes, like we still have to do a lot more before we can push these into production.
Yeah.
POC looks great, but production use cases, no one would want to adopt it with the kind of inconsistency that we see.
We had huge conversations at our booth about policy for AI or AI for policy. This was like a governance for AI or AI for governance. It was like a continual undercurrent of absolutely everything, every conversation that was going on at our booth. And I found that also to be fascinating, but at the same time, timely, because it was so nice to see a much larger focus on security. And it truly seems to be because of the AI movement. All of a sudden, people have decided, oh, maybe we should be a bit more security minded. And I've always been like a security person. That's actually like the space that I started off in tech. And so for me, it was like ingrained in me in my first job, security first, security first. And I always come across people like, I'll just ship it and we'll get there. And there's always this back and forth between, are we slowing things down? Are we speeding them up? Are we making them better? And people seem to think that they have to make a decision. And now with the addition of AI and more code, like Whitney was saying, that is produced externally from AI, or hallucinations, it started to become a very interesting conversation around policy for AI, governance for AI, or AI for policy and governance.
All of a sudden, everyone was talking about Spiffy Spire that automates
Yeah.
workload identity, because now that's a way to be able to have policy specific for your AI. Yeah. So it's like a project that's existed forever, and all of a sudden it was
It's
everywhere.
more
Spiffy
relevant.
Spire. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. What I'm getting is like, and this is what I felt also, like KubeCon London. Everyone, it was just excitement. Everyone just wanted to see, like, like show me everything related to AI. And this time, people were a little more skeptical, and they were talking about day two stuff like security and like, do I actually even want to use this and all of that. So it was a bit more grounded this time around, which I think where it was eventually heading. Cool. So based on like your KubeCon experience at Atlanta and London, like throughout the year, what were like the big themes you saw, like the cloud native community was like focused on this year? I know AI is obviously a huge one, but other than that, if you could name a couple of like major themes which you think were like the talk of the town for the CNCF community.
I might have a biased opinion as someone who works at Datadog, but I was hearing a lot of observability conversations because similarly to what Courtney was saying, like because of AI, everyone's all of a sudden really interested in security. Like similarly, because of AI, everyone's really interested in observability. And that's a couple of angles to that. Like one is all of a sudden, like observability produces so much data, and now you can use AI to like process that data and make it into actionable insights. And similar to what Sarab mentioned in the chat here, like an AI SRE was a very popular product he saw on the show floor. And so that's a great example of like now we're not just getting alerts, we have AI able to help us prioritize those alerts and do some triage on those alerts and give those alerts to the human with context of like what the problem might be and how to take action on it. And similarly, like developers can find bugs like more easily with AI help. And so using observability to build better workflows, a security workflow where the alerts are prioritized, or like here's where your system's most vulnerable, start here when you're hardening your cluster. But then there's observability also around, we got to watch what our LLMs are doing. We got to understand how we're using the AI at our organization. So whether it's just a dashboard that shows all the agents that are being used all across your organization, or whether it's like an experiments playground, so you can test, you can observe different points of your AI stack, like how's our prompt doing, how's our model doing, how's the, like at every step, you can see how changing it would affect the overall outcome. And just monitoring individual agents themselves has become really important.
What about you, Shivai?
Yeah, I think I had this discussion with you, Arsh. So I feel pretty much platform engineering, observability, AI were still kind of like the three biggest pillars with added sprinkles of security. So as I think Whitney and Courtney mentioned
Yeah.
about, we are now starting to see how we are using existing cloud native principles and we are applying that to AI. So those kind of discussions around policy, they're kind of showing up again and they are kind of taking the center stage. But I feel apart from that, there's not a lot more different. These are still three biggest strong pillars when it comes to cloud native and how we are seeing a lot of companies kind of adopt cloud native. Of course, AI gateways was probably one biggest change. Like a lot of companies who have been traditionally, or projects that have traditionally been API gateways, are now also kind of transitioning towards AI gateways. So I think I didn't even hear this term AI gateway ever in my life before February, where I was part of a panel. And now it's like, okay, HA proxy or Kong. Like you name the open source project and they have kind of shed their wings as like an API gateway. It's like this, oh yeah, all in AI gateway. So I think like that is also one major trend which we saw. And of course, like that kind of then brings everything to the table, like authentication, networking, all of those kind of bits and pieces on how you optimize your workloads for AI. So I think it's all encompassing, but yes, these are some of the trends that we saw very common this year.
Courtney, do you want to add anything, or do you agree with like?
No, I think for the most part, the observability was everywhere. I do think part of it is community based, and another part is vendors start doing
That's what
amazing.
I was gonna ask. Like one of the things. So, do you think like this push for observability is just from the community, or it's like suddenly there are like so many observability vendors that like has to become a theme?
Yeah, I think it's kind of both. I think obviously there are a lot of observability vendors, but I do think that is in response to community need and what they're trying to look for, and what they're trying to observe and how they're trying to do it, right? And so each vendor has a different take or a different way of doing things, and it will be interesting over the next year or so to kind of see if there's a winner takes all, or if each one of them develops a much more specific niche, and you start to see some of those grow in different patterns or ways. I think the one thing that I truly wholeheartedly believe, if AI weren't on the scene, we'd all only be talking about platform engineering. Um,
Like
if
the
people were not
last.
talking about AI, they were talking about platform engineering. That space seems to be maturing quite quickly. But I think also it's maturing because Kubernetes adoption and end users are maturing, right? A few years ago, everybody was just starting to adopt Kubernetes. They were just getting started. The use cases and the problems they had were very different from where they are now. And so those platform engineering teams have to mature much faster to catch up with the maturity of the adoption of Kubernetes in their companies. And so I do think if we weren't talking about AI as much, we pretty much only be talking about platform engineering. Because if people weren't talking about AI, that was mostly what they were talking about, was platform engineering or observability during my time at KubeCon, which I thought was super interesting, because that movement doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
I think that was, yeah, I agree with that. Now I want to talk about something which is a little personal to all of you. And this is like a very targeted question. And you can choose to skip it, but it would be great if you all could share, like, what was your biggest personal win for the year? Like, what is something you personally feel really proud of? Like, related. It could be related to CNCF, it could be not, but yeah. You can think about this for a while. I don't expect everyone to be.
Like survival.
Yeah.
To December.
Okay, let's make it more specific, because the more specific is like something related to work or like CNCF or cloud native community, like something you did, something you learned, or yeah.
I am very proud and happy to have gotten a new job at Datadog, and that's cool. I'm
Yay.
excited about that. I think I'm not the only one in this room right now who got a new job this year. And also personally, I'm starting to get invited to keynote conferences, like especially KCD's, Kubernetes Community Days conferences, and that has been an honor and a joy to get to keynote and travel for
I
that.
hope to see all of you at the KubeCon keynote very soon.
Yeah.
What about Courtney and Shiva? Do you have a personal win, something you're happy about this year?
Courtney, you can go first. Yeah.
Sure. I also took on a new role at Nirmata and with the Kyverno project, and I'm very proud
Virtual
that
high
we
five.
actually had 2 KyvernoCon events. So we had a virtual one for our global community. Yeah, there it is. A virtual one for our global community, and then our first in-person one. Those were really big milestones for our community. We also have reopened our graduation PR just at the end of last week.
Nice.
So keeping our fingers crossed that goes and continues to move forward with support from our community. So very proud of those things in terms of my day job. And on a personal, never in my wildest dreams thought that something like this could ever happen. My dear friend Amit D'Souza asked me to submit to KubeCon China with him, and we had our talk accepted. And 2 weeks after receiving the acceptance email, we then realized it was a keynote acceptance, because when they send you the email, it's the same header on the email, except for one at the very end. It doesn't show up on your mobile phone.
It should be in all caps,
you
all
2
bold.
And so I saw
That's
it come
amazing.
up on my phone, like, "Oh, your talk's been accepted," and sent him a message. It was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to ask for permission to go do this." I hope my bosses give me permission to go do this. And then 2 weeks later, I thought, "Oh, I need to ask for permission to do this," and open the email to look and see exactly what event details were there, and then went,
OMG.
Oh, that's so cute.
yeah. And that was not something that I ever in my wildest dreams would have thought would happen when I moved into this space a few years ago. It was an amazing experience, also because it was with my friend Amit, and so it was super special. The imposter syndrome afterwards was insane. It took me a few talks to get past that, and very thankful for KCD talks that were welcoming to me and my insane nerves afterwards, because that was daunting, and frankly, I'm proud that I got over it. I got past the imposter syndrome
Thanks
after the
for
talk.
saying that out loud. I think it's really important because like people see you on the stage giving keynotes and all of that stuff, and they assume that like especially people who are attending the first KubeCon, second KubeCon, they have like such a huge imposter syndrome, and like in tech, it's such a big thing. But and when you see someone on the keynote stage, you assume that they have it all figured out, they have it all sorted. But like admitting that everyone suffers from it, like regardless of the stage, regardless of what point you are at some point, I think that gives me at least a personal relief. I don't know about like other people, but yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah, relief. It happens. No matter how old you are. It happens.
What about you, Shivat?
Yeah, I think for me, it is a bit different. So it is just being a very active voice behind the GitOps project, which was incubated in the CNCF this year in April, and just being a very huge advocate, not necessarily from the perspective of like, hey, I'm the lead maintainer for the project. No, I'm not actually one of the core maintainers for the project, but I still feel like, okay, I have really seen how we helped get the active votes and recognition for the project to be very proactively get on board into the CNC ecosystem, and then helping see its adoption grow, collaborations with other projects that took on, and generally just seeing how people really recognized the project growth. In just a few months, it got 2,000 stars. So I think for me personally, that is a huge win. Just being very actively involved with a project that kind of literally started at KubeCon North America last year. So it's been just about 1 year, and now it's already being used at some companies. At least they're at an experimental stage of replacing Docker with GitOps, and we're seeing a very huge positive growth for other companies and other CNCF projects also coming together and working on larger discussions around AI standards and how we package AI models. So I feel, yeah, I mean, for me, just being involved with a project at such a nascent stage and seeing it grow to that level, I think that is a huge personal win. Of course, like that's not just my win; it's a win for the entire community, for the GitOps community. So that is a like good thing, because of course for me previously I've always been part of projects that are already well set up. So going through that journey of seeing, okay, like if you have a wonderful idea for a project that should be part of CNCF, what is the process like? What are the steps that you should take to get it as part of the sandbox project, and then eventually see how the growth, that is a very encouraging thing to see.
Very cool.
That is very cool. Makes me wish I had stuck with the Caverno project and contributing to it like 4 years ago
Always
when I started.
You're more than
But
welcome.
yeah, but it's very cool. I admit, like seeing a project go from like an adoption and then like through different stages of incubating, graduating, and all of that. I think that's something which is very rewarding. Cool. So that was a bit about us reflecting on like what last year was like. This year, I guess, right now still. But now I want to just talk to you about like what do you think 2026 is going to be like. So I have a like three parts to this question, and you can like answer each of those, or you could answer some of those. But what do you think in the cloud native community is going to keep growing in popularity, and what do you expect to come to a standstill, and what do you think is gonna decline not in terms of usage, but in terms of maybe people talking about it at KubeCons, or the buzz, what we call in the community. So what do you feel is gonna increase, come to a standstill, and gonna decline? Who wants to start this one?
I can start. I'm going to restate some things we already talked about, though.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
is
that's
platform engineering. As Courtney said, it's starting to mature. Like we're starting to see some best
yeah.
practices, and like it is. I think it's going to remain popular as something to talk about because the discipline's not going to go away. And as new technologies roll out, then those problems will become platform engineering problems. And so there's always going to be something to say. But as a baseline practice, I think the industry agrees that platform engineering is two thumbs up. Um, and then, as we've already discussed too, AI. We've seen the let me think of the hype cycle. It's like the peak of expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and where I think starting to approach the platform of productivity with the AI hype cycle. Both as Chavez is talking about like all the conformance, and we're talking about operationalizing, and when we talk about Gen AI too, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about um, like running the LLM size workloads and extending Kubernetes to be able to do that. And I think Shive's been talking a lot about that. And also we're talking about how do we use AI in agentic workflows? Like how are developers using AI to get better work done? And so both of those levels are levels that are being considered and watched by the cloud native community.
What about you, Shiva? Do you agree with Whitney's predictions?
Yeah, I think 100%. I didn't have much to add there, but yeah, I mean, we'll probably see the overall ecosystem getting more mature, and in some of the other way, as we are already seeing that some of the classical concepts that we use in general compute, what people have to realize is that in some ways, running AI workloads or even agentic workflows is very similar to how you run microservices, because you still need the most basic ingredients in order to build a scalable system, which means security, observability, things like not open, my bad, service meshes, right? All of those are still needed because ultimately, the way that we are seeing how people are going to adopt agentic workflows is in more controlled manner rather than it going full-fledged autopilot mode, ballistic AGI mode. Rather, you run it in a more constrained environment where you define the specific scope for the AI workloads so that they work in a more deterministic manner, which means that people don't realize, and I've seen a few talks around this, that where they compare agentic AI to just running simple workflow management on on Kubernetes. So I feel we'll see a larger adoption of existing technologies, whether it's like Kafka or to do like large scale ingestion of data into an agentic workflow that you're running with Kagent, let's say. So more of those examples, more of those integration stories of how people adopted agentic workflows into their existing ecosystem rather than building like a whole suite of different tools and then figuring out, okay, RSRE teams don't have any AI experience, so how do we do that? At the other side of things, we'll also probably see a rise of developer tooling, or I guess like platform engineering purposely built for being able to integrate agentic workflows into your existing doc. So it's like, yes, it's both ways, right? It's very similar to how WebAssembly came in. When cloud native WebAssembly became a huge thing, projects like Wasm Cloud and even for that matter Spin, they started to build platforms. And what the basic idea was that people who are just adopting AI, they don't want to necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes. They just want a platform that works for them, and you'll just let the magic of agents work behind the scenes. So I think like that's where we'll kind of plateau as building those experiences which people can directly consume, and they will be able to then get the benefits of using AI.
Yeah, I see your point, but I kind of disagree with both of you. I think we have not reached the trough of disillusionment with AI. I think next year both KubeCons are still going to be a lot more AI stuff until I feel like the community goes on to latching on to things. I think like Shiva mentioned something which was interesting, like Wasm. Like I did not hear a lot of people talking about Wasm this time around.
No,
So I
I
feel
didn't
like the
either.
community latches on to like Wasm, platform engineering, AI. I think something has to be bigger than AI for the community to, like stop talking about it, and until we get that thing, like this is going to be like the major theme, and I think it's going to be more in your face next time around. But who knows? What about you, Goti? Do you agree with them, like on?
I agree with both sides. I agree with you that community definitely latches on to whatever the latest, coolest, sexiest technology is, and right now it's definitely AI, and it's gone. I mean, we've seen phases go through of different technologies pass through that hype phase with the community, and then sometimes it trickles out, and sometimes it becomes a much more stable conversation, right? So I think that's very true. I think it's a very human thing to do as well. And especially in this space, people are always excited about whatever's cutting edge and what's coming next. So I think that's definitely a thing. But at the same time, I think that because we're talking about technologists, people who are developers, and when AI started, there was this whole concept of AI is going to take your job if you're just coding, you don't know how to use AI, right? And then it's going to take your marketing team's job, and it's going to take everybody's job. And I do think because there was such a big stance around that at the beginning, that there are a lot of people who are very vigilant and somewhat put off with it and not looking to adopt it at large at any point in time soon. And also there's a lot of insecurity around how it will or won't perform and how it will or won't affect things in production at the end of the day. And we're talking about businesses adopting this. And the elephant in the room is that in order to adopt AI, you have to have budget for it. You have to pay for those GPUs. You have to have budget for it. There's not going to be, any more conversations at AI booths about, so is there an open source version of this? That's gone, right? You can have an open source version of a bunch of other types of tools, but you're not likely to come across an open source version of an AI agent at this point because you have to pay. There's a certain amount of tokens. So you might have a free version. You might have an option to try it out for a while without paying for it. But to adopt it at large, that's a much bigger ask that we're making of an end user in terms of the budget and how they're allocating that. And so I think that there will be kind of a maturity of, okay, who's actually adopting this and what use cases is it going to give us our biggest bang for our buck in making that investment on the business side of things. So I think there will be a point where AI conversations don't die down. They just drastically change to what is the business value that I'm actually getting from this, and can we afford it, and is it going to give us enough to make it worthwhile? And that will be a big shift in the industry, especially considering there's always such a focus on open source, open source, open source. This is going to definitely change the concept of that. Other than AI, I do think that we're going to start hearing, we've already kind of seen this happen, but there's a tendency for case studies and people love them. They're not always talking about the latest, most cutting edge technologies, but they are talking about very real world situations from the battlefield and the trenches, and people love these. I think multi-cluster and multi-tenant Kubernetes talks are going to become much more common because it's going to be very difficult for people to avoid having some sort of hybrid distribution in their organization, and a lot of different things have to be juggled in order to do that well and at scale. And I think that there will be more and more talk around stateful workloads. Data on Kubernetes was such when I started in the space, that's where I started. And people were like, it's never going to happen, because Kelsey Hightower said that it was pointless to do. And somehow this community has just continued to push forward, which is probably part of the reason I kind of became fascinated with the Cloud Native PG project earlier this year. But I do think that is going to become a tendency now, because the truth is with adoption of AI and with the way we're speeding things up, that's a massive amount of data that we now have to decide, and observability as well. This is a massive amount of data that you now have to decide where and how and when are you going to store it? What's it going to cost you? Where are you going to put it? Can you scale that out? And so these are things that are just, as people mature in their usage of these technologies, these might not be the most cutting edge, super exciting advancements, but they do become part of your everyday that people have to figure out, and it's not always simple.
Yeah, I think that's a good compromise we can reach between the different opinions we have on what's gonna grow in popularity. Cool. I think we are nearing the end of our allotted time for the stream. And before we ended it, I really wanted to thank you all for taking out the time for this. I know I could just spend another hour talking to all of you, picking your brain about non-Kubernetes stuff and Kubernetes stuff. Let's answer this one question, and then I think we can do a wrap up. If you all want to plug in something where people can find you, connect you, we can do that after answering this question. Whitney, do you want to take this because it seems relevant to what you were saying about the overspending on AI, right?
That MIT study. Well, also,
Yeah.
so right now we have venture capitalists flooding the market. The AI, anything related to Gen AI, people are willing to invest in, and that happens in a short term way. And at some point, the venture capitalists want to see return on their money. So similar to what Courtney was saying, at some point, it's not going to be like, here's some free money so everyone can try AI. It's more like, okay, you get to use it, but now we want, is it actually, as the dust settles, is the value of what you're getting greater than the actual cost of doing it, the non VC subsidized cost of doing it? And I don't think there's a way to know the answer to that. But that's the question here, and that's what people are speculating about. I've also seen this diagram of like the AI, the coding agents are investing in the underlying models, the OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever, who are investing in NVIDIA. They're paying for their NVIDIA. Yeah. And so like all the way down, like we're at this point, to increase adoption, everyone's willing to lose a little money so that they get market share. And eventually that's not going to be where are we going to be when the dust settles. And I think it's not a matter of if there's overspending. I think it's a matter of to what degree is there overspending.
You could also start to argue that overspending is already happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But what that looks like in all practicality, I have no idea.
But I just like one outside thought is that it's also becoming a bit easier to run AI models without having to pay much, right? Because you're looking at the cost per million tokens going down and down, and the infrastructure becoming better and better to be able to run models. So I think just a very outside thought. I completely agree with whatever points were discussed here, but at the same time, I think there'll still be some leeway where you get a chance to experiment because the underlying architecture is becoming a lot. Because if we talk about, like, we could go in a completely different discussion about GPUs and their pricing and how now people are just saying, just take my GPU. They're trying to sell it off so that people can run. So I think like we have gone through that wave as well, where that bubble has bursted around the pricing. So it will become a lot more adoptable as a technology, similar to like how you can run Kubernetes today on an edge device. I think we'll also see that as a stage where anyone can run an experiment with and try to build their
have like
idea.
self-hosted LLMs.
Exactly.
Yeah, K3D for AI stuff, like a smaller
Yeah.
Kubernetes cluster or something.
Exactly.
Cool. I hope that answered your question, Saurabh, and thank you for asking that. And that was it. Like, thank you so much, Courtney, Whitney, Shivai, for taking out the time for this. I really appreciate you all doing this, and I hope everyone who joined in found this useful. Before we end, do you want to plug in something, what you're doing or what your company is doing, or just let people know where they can reach out to you?
I'm Whitney. I work at Datadog. Datadog has a bunch of cool AI initiatives. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at whitneylee.com also.
Courtney, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yep. I'm Courtney Nickerson. You can find me on LinkedIn and probably way too many Slack channels, all under Courtney Nickerson. And if you're interested in getting involved in the Kyverno project, or if you want to talk about policy as code for AI or AI for policy, reach out. I've got a lot of different sub projects going on that I'd love to introduce you to, and support our graduation push, please.
Yeah. Shivai?
Yeah, just you can find me Shivalamba on Twitter, LinkedIn, or maybe on the CNCF Slack, and a couple of things. If you're interested in kind of revolutionizing how we package AI models, then definitely join the working groups for GitOps and Model Pack, very early stage projects, and you can be an early contributor. And secondly, if you are getting started with your journey in Cloud Native, you can join the Meshri project as well, because they have a program called Meshmate where you get one-to-one mentorship for Cloud Native and contributing to your first ever Meshri PR. So that's a great way to
Very
get
cool.
started with Cloud Native. So join that. And you'll find some wonderful mentors.
I have one more thing to plug, which is there. We just started a Datadog community YouTube channel. When I say we, I mean the Datadog advocacy team.
Yeah.
And I'm about to make a show for that called Datadog Illuminated, where I use the Lightboard and have discussions about Datadog engineering at scale, including how Datadog uses AI workflows and about how they use Kubernetes.
If you've not seen Whitney's streams where she teaches stuff, you should definitely check that out. That's pretty cool. All right. Thank you for watching this. You'll find the recording for this on the Metalware LinkedIn and YouTube channel. And yeah, see you all on the next webinar. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.